Welcome to, and I've brought a new fresh guest with me, and he's a ancient Dune forager. He's been there since before the dawn of time, and yeah, Elias, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I am Elias or Elias. They actually both work. By day, I'm a protocol specialist at Coinbase Cloud, and by night, I am a Dune warrior and an angel investor and contributor in Web3 protocols and different things. So yeah, long time user of Dune, meme appreciator of like all things Dune lore, and excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on, and I'm excited for this conversation. So one thing immediately comes to mind. I always read your Twitter profile, and I'm like protocol specialist at Coinbase. Like, what does that entail?
So my team is basically tasked with being the subject matter experts in all things layer 1, layer 2, and so on. So Coinbase Cloud is basically what evolved from the acquisition of Bison Trails from Coinbase, which happened like back in already a year ago, February 2021. And so I joined the team in the summer of 2020. Bison Trails is basically an infrastructure provider for Web3 protocols. We have a platform on which people can come and run their own nodes in a non-custodial manner. So run validators across many networks. We are, I think, the biggest provider by amount of stake that we power on our platform. It's about 30 billion or so. And then we have like a whole suite of products that we keep developing, and our focus is increasingly there, which is around data access, read write bandwidth, like APIs, all kinds, and so on. So as you can imagine, like we have like a large surface to interface with the protocol layer of things, and we are effectively kind of the conduits of context between the protocol, their communities, the developer teams, and so on, and the company, our product teams, our customers, and so on. So we sit right in the middle. It's a fun job. Can't complain, really.
Yeah, it seems like you must be involved like across like the whole blockchain space then. Like it's not just like EVM focused, but rather you're basically like every chain that is out there.
Yeah,
You're kind of
that's exactly right. And we don't spend a ton of time thinking about like the application protocol layer. So smart contract systems that are built on top of chains. Although we're we spend our free time researching that stuff, playing with that stuff, kind of like helping build that stuff as well. And it does inform our view of the infrastructure layer, kind of like top down, right? Because okay, like every infrastructure layer is different. What kind of like unique things or what sort of limitations does each one have, and how does that translate on the protocol layer? But principally, we look at kind of like what's under what you see on your screen when you're interacting with Web3. So yeah, it's like it's a pretty expansive set of kind of like responsibilities, and the scope is pretty big, and it's really interesting because there's not that many places like that in the industry, right? Like when you actually get to look at like the whole thing. And I must tell you, the industry is growing very fast, and it's becoming increasingly harder to actually like keep track of everything. So if you're interested in working with us, drop me or my partner Victor a note. We need help, please.
yeah. Yeah, the search for talent is heating up. So what can I take from that? But like you said, you're not interested in the application layer, but like to some extent, the application layer informs like there's like a free market like thing going on there, where it's like the app teams will choose the chains that like kind of have the best infrastructure or that are the most interesting to them. So like, do you kind of like do some data analysis there, or like how do you actually like, because there's like so many blockchains out there now, like how do you actually inform yourself about like what you would like want to look into?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's like it's almost like asking a venture person, how do you source deals? Like
Yeah.
you'll never get an answer, because that's like the magic juju. But also it's like it's like it's a product of like it's a snowball effect, and you're kind of like in a trajectory, and then you gather things, and suddenly you have like, you know, stuff that you do and people that you know and things that you look at that are your source of information. They end up being pretty good, but they're not like, from the start, at least like in my case, they haven't been explicit like, I'm gonna go and do this, I'm gonna go do that. Like a lot of like where I've ended up has been a product of things that I've been interested in over time, and I've kind of like let my interest and my gut guide me towards things, including Dune, right? But we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a bit. So how do I look at data, for sure. Like Dune. Dune is like principally like application layer data, but like you can also like go and look at, you know, hey, what the Polygon chain is doing and how it's behaving, and like how adoption, like, you know, by various metrics, like is that TVL, is that users, is it transactions, like, you know, cluster transactions, do like all kinds of cool things, and say like, you know, how much activity is potentially you know, MEV related, and how much not, and how much that like impacts you know, the chain's block space. um but Dune wasn't always like that, right? Dune wasn't always the conduit to be able to get these answers. I see that you guys launched Solana today. Congratulations, this is massive. I have so many questions. I can't wait to actually start
Oh no,
slowly.
pain for me. Yeah.
So Florian says this because I've been bugging him on the Discord for a very long time, and like initially I think my questions were pretty stupid, but over time they got they got a little bit like more sophisticated, and so Florian is like, oh my god, not this guy again.
Yeah, I think this time we can learn together. Actually,
Yeah,
Solana data is very new for me as well. So
let's do
it
it.
seems like I have to become a protocol specialist as well. Like I have to like be able to juggle with the data of multiple yeah, like data structures now. So it's like, yeah, it's getting harder, but we'll all get there. So yeah, you've been a like big Dune user, and like why are we actually doing all of this? Like why does blockchain data matter? Like there's so many like great dashboards in Dune, and like you can look at them, and like, but like what is the actual, like, how do you use it in your, like, to inform decisions or to make decisions inside of your organizations?
Yeah, before we go into that specifically, there's like it's not epistemological, but there's like an essence into like what Dune is and why Dune, and all of that stuff. And it's like Dune is the conduit of truth, right? Like blockchain data is like a human can read it and make any sort of elicit any meaningful conclusions from looking at that data, right? So, but blockchains are powerful because they minimize the trust necessary in order for multiple parties to sort of operate on that, and thereby they become really interesting sort of platforms for the exchange of all kinds of things. And then in the aggregate, they spell like the data that these blockchains like print can say a lot of interesting things about how humans behave, right? And like the more we get to everything running on a blockchain, like, you know, a ton of the world's transactions, a ton of the world's commerce, and so on, and like that's why I'm here for. The more we get there, the more the truth of what's happening on these chains becomes increasingly important. And so Dune is like this incredibly amazing tool that helps you kind of, you know, take the truth, or some part of the truth, or in some small subset of the whole you know, world that's operating on a blockchain, and actually give it some sort of meaning. Is number going up or is number going down? And you know, in its most fundamental, that's a truth, you
Yeah.
know. But as far as your earlier question was, how do I use it for work? Well, I will be using it more now that I'm there's more chains on Dune, because like historically Dune was very Ethereum focused, and it's been amazing to see you guys grow into like different ecosystems and so on, because like as we discussed before, my job has a lot to do with like layer ones, all kinds of layer ones, and that data is actually hard to access. So now like that Dune has Solana data, I'm gonna be all over it. But other than that, there's like Ethereum has been the hotbed for activity for the last 2 years, like ever since DeFi summer, things like started getting crazier and crazier. And Dune has been traditionally a great resource for me to kind of like, I have this question, right, about a trend that we see in the industry, and I got to figure out like, but what's actually happening, right? And like the whole thing, I think for me, started with Bitcoin on Ethereum, which was during DeFi summer, BTC was growing, but like actually how much, and like what's going on, and like are people like excited about this product or are they not, and like is number going up or is it going down? And so at the time I didn't really know SQL that well, but it was such a burning question that I had to like figure it out, right? And like I was bugging Frederick, then I was bugging you, and I learned the hard way. But like it's been immensely helpful, like tracking other things like liquid staking on Ethereum, and the distribution of stake among protocols, who the depositors are, how they're distributed, and so on. Like that tells you real things about who is participating in this market, how they're participating, and then you can make some smart assumptions about what their motives are and so on. And that's kind of like the game of uncovering the truth, and it's super fun.
Yeah, I see. So basically you're looking like at a certain subset of the market, and then you're trying to build a dashboard on that specific topic, and then you try to get to a like clearer picture of that sector of the industry. And you can easily do that on Dune. Yeah, that is that's what we do, or like that's what we offer you. You're saying like it tells you something about like the like psychology of the market or something, or like the psychology of the participants. So what I'm wondering there is like how much of the data that is on the chain can actually be taken at face value. So for example, like we have this great dashboard from Richard Chen, which is like DeFi users over time, and there's like there's a number there now, and I think it has crossed. I'm blanking. I don't know. Like it's a lot.
5 million, 6 million.
Yeah. So, but how much of that is actual like wallets, and how much of that is like actual users, or just like people with multiple wallets?
The number is 4.4 million. That's great. Congrats, DeFi. So yeah, there's a lot of subjectivity in blockchain data, right? But like, and there, to some extent, there will always be subjectivity, because different people have different views, different people look at different things, and so on. Can talk a little bit about that later, but subjectivity is also a spectrum, right? And so it starts from basically deciphering the very base thing that you're looking for, and actually having something on the screen or on a table or something that you can interpret, and then it's iterating upon that, right? And like with every iteration you can like remove a little bit of subjectivity, and like in the quest of that, because subjective things are so by merit of the fact that a bunch of people have different views on it, like people collaborating to dispel that subjectivity, or at least like minimize it, is like a really interesting sort of direction we could go, that I haven't like actually seen being explored yet so much. So who was it that was triggered by the cumulative figures on Richard's dashboard? There's a
I don't know anymore, but
there's
Yeah.
a really interesting like Twitter side narrative of someone that is really pissed off at Richard using those cumulative figures. But the beauty of Dune is that like you can also fork that query, and if you have a different view, or if you can if you want to see it displayed differently, you can just fork like all the work that Richard has done in like aggregating addresses and like combing through like logs, because like he does that. This guy's fucking insane. But you can take all that work that Richard has done, and then you can just like change the view, right, of how it's being displayed, and look at it like on a day-by-day basis. You can like do it on a weekly basis. You can do it like non-cumulative. You can like do all kinds of interesting things.
Yeah, I think what we as platform could really like, what could really be improved is that we like kind of find a way that I could just make a PR to Richard's dashboard, or like we just start like assembling a lot of different like SQL views, and then like if I'm not okay with like how Richard pulls this particular like data for this particular protocol in line like 297, then I can just go in there and be like, hey, like maybe we should change this from like sum over to like group by whatever. So I think there's a like, because then we could basically start up building like a Wikipedia style sources of truth. And I'm like we're launching a few initiatives to make such things happen, because I think that's like a really interesting thing that's happening on Dune, where it's like we are collaborating, but there's like Frederick has these great blog posts about like there's this like siloed data and like hedge funds, and like on Dune we are all in the same silo. But what I start to recognize is like we are starting to build like own silos within the big silo, and like I think we need to like really like try to surface the collective information that we are all like, or like this like we need to collectivize the information more. Like we need to make it even more clear.
Yeah, 100%, and give like more outlet for creativity, right? And like just uncover more of the truth. So like I don't know, I've caught myself kind of wondering like, what if there was an easy way to like look at area under the curve, for example, on Dune, right? Which is like a fairly complex calculation. You like, I don't know if you can even do it in SQL, but right, like, you know, like you have a curve, for example, but the area under the curve could actually like really tell you something about like what's going on. And that's like, these are some like more complex metrics that are not really like easy to deploy on Dune at the moment, right? Like you can do like the basic stuff, but then it's also like, there's also fatigue, right? Of like, of working on like complex stuff on Dune, because, you know, I worked on the bridge away dashboard, which is basically a collection of all the bridges that I could track at some given point in time, and then now I have a backlog that I need to update. But basically tracking all their activity, and there's something like 25 different bridges there, and they each one needs like a different different treatment to actually reflect the reality. The reality is Etherscan. Basically, that's kind of like what you need to benchmark on. Like that's your source of truth. And so in order to like build that dashboard, and then also build like multiple permutations, so you have different useful screens on there, it takes a lot of time, right? Like each bridge needs its own treatment, and then put them all together, and then you end up with like something like 800 lines of SQL, right?
Yeah.
I'm not the tidiest writer of SQL either, so the onus is also on me. But you know, to go the extra mile and find like rates of change, or like, you know, things like area under the curve, or like whatever, then you're out of willpower by that point. You're like, well, this is good enough. Like, why should I, like, you know, I'm tired. Like I'm ready to like start doing something else. And so if these things were a little bit easier, I think we would be able to uncover like even more of the truth.
Yeah, I guess like collective intelligence is really the keyword here. Like me being able to go into your dashboard and being like, hey, like Elias has done all of this great work, and now like let me extend on this. Because like if I now like 100% fork your dashboard and then like make my own version, but like based on your queries, then it's like a bit of like, is he okay with this? Like, is this kind of like, I don't know, infringing on his queries or something? Even though like on Dune, like I think everything's fair game. Like if you put a query out there and you don't make it private, then it's like if it gets forked and somebody else uses it, it's totally fine. But like in an optimal world, like I could just like make a PR or like basically start like some kind of collaboration like on your dashboard, and then it would just be like co-authored by a couple users. So
rewards attribution is the most complicated part in that endeavor, I think, because like the way I see it, there are two Dune users, right? There are the public users who are stunting for stars, like myself. And there's this whole like other shadowy Dune cabal that work in private, right? And their stars, the equivalent of their stars is alpha, right? So like people work in like, super secret dashboards and so on, like to uncover user behaviors and patterns that they can like leverage to like trade better or make better decisions and so on. So the second group of users, at least in this slicing, is irrelevant. The first group of users, so the star sensitive users, like that's the reward at the moment, right? And like maybe it's like it's a currency in and of itself because it has some sort of like power. It's like a mini dopamine hit, when you're like
yeah, for sure.
Seeing your work like get adopted and people appreciate it and so on. Like it's a great reward. And so once you have that like PR functionality and so on, the question becomes like, well, who gets those? Like, how do the stars get distributed, right? Like, is it half stars? Is it double stars? Is it like square root stars? Like, what's the actual number? So I'm curious to hear if you actually have like any thoughts along those lines. Like, how do you do attribution of like the payload effectively?
Yeah, I think the star system is beautiful because it is so simple. Because it's just like we don't like, there's no like smileys, whatever. It's just like either you like this or you like don't like this, and like you can't even downvote something. And it's like it's a very like in its like simplicity, it's very beautiful. But I think like there's like we definitely need to like think about things like this if we ever start to like get like combined attribution or something like that. So I've not really thought about it, and there's like a way where we could maybe like monetarily incentivize people and like saying, hey, this dashboard is a public good. Like the bridge dashboard you built, like I think that's a huge public good. Like I think it's so useful for like so many people in the space, and like maybe we set up a Gitcoin like thing for like this dashboard in specific, and then like we have like a fund for that specific dashboard, and if somebody like makes great additions, then we are like, hey, like this PR to this dashboard is probably worth like 2K or something. Yeah. And then like we get into this problem of like micromanagement, and then there's probably like an avenue where we like kind of go like, hey, like there's like a few people working on this, and it's like kind of decentralized, and like we Dune, like we actually don't take care of this. Like there's a few like there's very interesting like method or like ideas that are floating around in my head around doing something like this. But basically like I think like these public good dashboards that are used by like multiple like across multiple teams and like basically cover an entire sector. So that's also like the NFT dashboards, which we like base on NFT.trades, and like the DEX trades dashboard. That's like, it's a huge like asset for Uniswap. Like the lending dashboard is a huge asset for like Aave or Compound. Like they probably want to know like, hey, how are our metrics stacking up against like, and like if we find ways to like incentivize those protocols to pay into like contributor pools to like basically like, hey, like there's a data team that's like covering all decentralized lending platforms and not just one, because there's like huge synergies to be had there as well. So it's like I think like some kind of solution like that would make the most sense. And then it's like stars are very nice, and like, but in the end it's like if you get cited in a scientific paper or you like get money or like there's a clear history of the PRs you would make, right? So then it's like if you like ever apply for a job and you can say like, hey, I helped like manage this like decentralized lending like asset decentralized lending dashboard over like a year, and here's my contributions, and like the following people have like reviewed and like merged my PRs, and it's like that would be like way bigger cloud than like a few stars on Dune, I guess.
Yeah, pretty sick actually. But you're making a really great point about like the the public good dashboards and like the project dashboards, and like even if Dune doesn't have like those systems that Dune could develop down the line and so on, it's like, to me it's pretty amazing that people have actually taken the time and care to create those dashboards, and I'm not patting myself in the back.
Doing great, Elias. You're a good citizen.
But it's really curiosity, right? And I think, who was it? Like, I think Dobby had a really great tweet the other day, which is really about that. Like, you see, most of the power users of Dune are like very curious people, right? They're like mostly driven by curiosity, and so like for anyone that's interested in learning how to like work with Dune and so on, like the number one thing, and I think that was Dobby's tweet, but like I've caught myself saying it like over years probably now. The most important thing is to have great questions, right, in your head, and like questions that are so burning that you can't like, you just have to find the answer, right? And that's the perfect sort of vehicle for you to get learning and like get better at using Dune.
Yeah. He who has a why can endure anyhow.
Correct. I have never heard that before, but this is a great it's a great thing.
Yeah, I think the background is not too good, but let's leave it at that. I think that's what I noticed. Like when I train you with, or like when new people come into our community, and like I can usually tell within like 20 messages that we've exchanged, like, is this guy gonna make it or is he not gonna make it? Because there's like there's certain types of questions and like certain like ways of phrasing questions, and like just like you feel the spirit of people who are like, hey, I actually like really want to know this, and I'm really like interested in getting to this data point. And then it's like they're like, you can pick up the SQL and Etherscan. It's like the like passion has to be there in some kind of sense.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, by the way, have you, like, I always want to ask you this, but I never got to ask you. So you've been hanging out like in the Dune Discord, herding cats like for what seems like a pretty long time now. Have you ever gotten any abuse from users coming in and kind of like demanding stuff or being like super rude or anything like that?
Like a few times, like not really. Like our
Right.
community is really like it's pretty good, and like we're all like very much focused on like, hey, like this is our product, this is the data. Like there's some like fun, and we have like a lot of like memes and like all these great Discord emojis. Like they really add like a lot of color to the Discord. But I think like in general it's very technical. So there's no real like, people are like a bit mad like when I was telling people like CoinGecko prices soon forever, and then like CoinGecko prices didn't come. But it was mostly like, I don't know, like
You
most
told me
people
that.
like
I remember.
they're a bit
They're
sad like it wasn't there earlier. But in general, like our community is like super nice, super like competent, and like just general, like they want to get shit done, right? Like you don't come into Dune Discord to ask like why not Moon, and like why don't devs do something, because like first of all, like our devs are doing a lot. And second of all, like I like not having a token takes out a lot of noise out of the system. Like I can see ways where it's like I've talked about these like public goods, and like trying to like get people to coordinate and stuff, and like a token is like, it can be used as a like mechanism to like coordinate people very well. So it's like maybe there's a universe where like Dune has a token and it works even better, but like there's also like a lot of noise introduced into the system, and like maybe I would actually just start a second like Dune Discord, which would be like Dune, like $Dune, and like just like put the Moon Boys in there, and like have my like wizards in here.
Like the inverse of a token gated Discord, like everybody that has like a token, a Dune token, cannot get into the Dune Discord. Oh my god, there's like, so that's like an idea I was toying around with like a Dune community DAO and so on. Like at some point, I think I was scrolling Twitter yesterday, as I do, and I saw someone actually tweet that, and they were like, anybody interested in doing like a Dune DAO, like an analyst DAO or whatever? And I thought that was pretty fun, because we gotta have a token in everything.
I mean, it does make sense. There's huge like synergy effects if you're like not working alone, but rather like with a few other people. They can audit your work. You can work together. You can split up by like different sectors. There's a lot of reasons for people to like start building DAOs on top, like just for like being Dune analysts and like learning together, succeeding together. I think like that is what eventually will happen probably. That like a lot of different DAOs like work as groups on Dune. It's like kind of like you would hire, like if you're like a big corp, like you hire like a bunch of consultants to take care of like a certain part of your business. And maybe it will be like I see it today already, that it's like people hire people like specifically to do Dune stuff because it's like it's very important to the organization, but maybe like there's just a shortage of Dune wizards in general, which is very true. So if you're watching this and you don't know how to Dune and want to have a job, learn Dune.
Not financial advice.
Yeah, but maybe it's like the need is there for the organization, but like they don't need a full-time position. Like there's like, if you like get the dashboard running once, then it's like, what do you do with this Dune guy? Like, is he just gonna like get snacks for the office, or like what's his like? I mean, you can always surface more data, and like I don't know, if he's like working for Aave, for example, he could start like contributing to this lending protocol like dashboard. But yeah, I don't know. Like, but I very much see that happening, that like different DAOs will actually work on Dune, and maybe like there will be a like Dune community, like officially endorsed Dune community DAO at some point. But I don't know what Frederick and Mats think about that. Like, I don't have a particular opinion about that, so I'm not too sure what will happen.
No one knows except for Mats and Frederick.
Have they been
on the podcast? Are you planning to bring them on the podcast at some point?
Yeah, I do plan, and I don't have a guest for next week yet, so it might happen, but we will see. I don't know how long they are in America for, so that would be nice if I would actually have them like in my time zone.
I would actually love to see a podcast with Mats, right, and like unearth like early Dune stories and kind of like talk about the technical stuff in the back end and so on. Like, they're both great. The Dune forefathers, the first settlers of Arrakis.
The founding fathers, actually.
The founding fathers. So fun. Awesome stuff. Yeah, but it's a great community. Truly, like very. It feels like there's never ruckus and community outrage or any of that stuff. This is why I asked you the question before, like, have you ever gotten abused and so on? Because like, I mean, people are angry, or like there's a bunch of people that are angry. And every time I kind of like scroll through the Dune dashboard and I ask questions, so like people are super collaborative. Like if you're not available and someone knows the answer, they will like type in the answer, right? And it's so great to see that just grow organically, right? Like just the product attracting like a certain type of, because like as far as I'm concerned, like all of Dune's growth so far has been organic, right? Like there hasn't been any like big marketing campaigns or like sales teams or like anything like that, right? It's just like literally curious people and like projects that are building on Ethereum and thereafter like all these different chains, just like working on Dune, because it's just a great tool to get the information that you need and then sharing it on Twitter, and then more people trickle in. But it's really something that the community is the way it is, without having kind of any sort of extra incentives, efforts, sales efforts, blah blah blah, the whole shebang. So yeah.
Really, well, I guess it's just like we don't offer like monetary incentives directly like from us, but like a lot of people are like they're earning like legit money like working on Dune, and like a lot of people like this is like a like I think if you apply somewhere today and you're like, hey, I'm a Dune wizard with like 1,000 stars, then like if the company like if the like hiring manager at least like kind of knows the blockchain space, then he's like, holy shit, like this guy must know his like he must know his stuff. So it's like I think a
So
lot of people are using it like
when NFTs, you got to print NFTs for like wizards with like more than 1,000 stars. How many of them are there actually? I wonder.
I can't really comment on this, but
So 1, 2, 3.
there's something in the pipeline, I think.
Oh, wow, scoop. There's about 15. You should, it would be nice actually if there was like hey, you made it to 1,000, here's an NFT.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
I think we'll think about it. I'll tell my product team. Let's get a bit back into like structured podcasting. So you have this great thread on your predictions for 2022, and I thought maybe we can take a few of those predictions and see how they look like currently. I mean, we've only passed 2 months, but like I've looked for those who we can actually like look at the data. So I think you can share your screen, and then the first like prediction that I found interesting and that you actually need to explain to me a bit is the sixth one, which is as validators start to capture MEV and fees, demand for validator slots rocket, and the activation queue gets maxed out. And then you're saying Lido Finance will probably win big here, and liquid staking in general will be a big thing. So first of all, like I didn't know that the activation queue can get maxed out. Can you like drop a couple of words on what that exactly means?
So there's I could be wrong about my numbers, but apparently every year there is the maximum number of ETH units that can onboard onto the Beacon chain is about like 10 or 11 million ETH, right? So about 10 or 11% of the total supply of ETH can actually get staking, and that's basically allotted into validator slots. However much ETH that is divided by 32, that's how many validator slots you have. So so you can then, if that's true, then it also means that the Beacon chain is basically a plot of land with finite real estate that is growing, but it's growing in a predictable fashion and can't grow infinitely, right? It has like very specific boundaries, which kind of like define or limit its potential growth. And so my thinking there is that, okay, so well, that's the case. We have like a finite plot of land, and suddenly once the merge happens, validators at the moment, they only earn inflationary rewards, and they're playing a game of like, I saw this, I saw this, I saw this, I saw this. It's this time, we are here on the map, and so on. And everybody like puts those votes of where we are in space and time in a blockchain context, and then commits them, and then someone like packages them together and like makes consensus, right? And like works towards finalizing the chain, and so on. Once the merge happens, and then the execution layer will come on top of the Beacon chain, things will get a lot more interesting, right? Because then validators will start capturing fees, and they will start observing different things and reporting different things, and then have transaction ordering rights and so on. And therefore, being a validator will become like double or triple more interesting and valuable than it is today, right? And plus, a big part of the effort will have been de-risked because now you're post-merge, right? And like, will the merge happen? There's a lot of people in the Ethereum community that believe it will, including myself, but there's a bunch of people outside, and especially like people that are not very close to the problem that are like, yeah, well, will it ever happen? Yes, it will, if you are listening. But so you have like a risk reduction, and then at the same time, you have like an increasing in the utility that like you can enjoy by being a validator. So that to me says that demand will double or triple, right? For like these plots of land. And therefore, we just talked about the fact that there isn't infinite space, right? And so like in every major city in the world in its like growth phases, there's always like less space than there is demand for space, rent prices and house prices go through the roof. That mechanism is not available in the Beacon chain, because it's like a fixed price that you need to pay to actually like buy a place. But to rent a place, it's really not, right? And by renting a place, like the way I sometimes look at the whole liquid staking category is that it's almost like you're renting space on the Beacon chain, right? You buy ST ETH and then someone else has deployed that validator, but you have rights to all sort of the economic residual benefits that trickle down from that validator that's deployed. So effectively, if you want to get exposure to that higher utility, getting one of those liquid staking tokens is the only way that's available to do that. Or like if you're less sophisticated and so on, like if demand will increase and the space is capped, then if you really want to get in there, it is the only way, right? And so that's my rationale in thinking that these liquid staking derivatives will benefit disproportionately, like at and post merge, and they will start trading at a premium to staked ETH.
Yeah, interesting analogy with the cities. So basically, there's no like the city, like it's an island. Like there's no more plots. You can't build higher. So it's like somewhere there has to be a premium, and because like there's no rent. Okay. Interesting. Can we actually take a look at that dashboard? I can share my screen as well if you're.
Yep. We can take a look at the dashboard. If you want to share your screen, go ahead and share your screen, because I've got you on now.
Yep.
There we go.
Is this the correct layout? Let's go to.
God damn it! Error. Your query took too long to execute. Hey, that's no bueno.
Or these are here. So yeah, wow. Lido is really. It's not even close. Like Lido is dominating this market entirely.
Yeah.
Do you have any insights why that is? Just because Lido was first to market, or is there like some special properties that Lido has?
Well, like with a lot of these efforts, it's a lot about time to market. It's a lot about legitimacy, right? And Lido was really fast to get to market, and also they did an amazing job at like getting multiple stakeholders, like capital, validator operators, and so on. They got everybody, a lot of people that matter, to get involved in the DAO and the whole effort, right? And that's really powerful, because that helps like drive integrations. That helps drive trust and brand awareness on the consumer end. And so they've done an amazing job, and they continue to do an amazing job in that department. Will things stay that way forever? I don't know, right? But it's a pretty significant lead that they have established. And if the wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum, for example, market is anything to go by as kind of like an analogy of an older market that also kind of like has very similar properties, it actually could very well end up being that way, right? So you see that, HBTC started competing at some point, but they never really kind of managed to get meaningful traction. And WBTC is still like 80% of that market. And a large part of that is that like the more you are the product with like the highest liquidity, with the most mindshare and so on, the more integrations you actually are able to achieve. And the more integrations you're able to achieve, the more useful your specific product is, as opposed to like any of your competitors' products.
Yeah, very much like network effect in terms of liquidity.
100%.
Because like if like staked ETH, ST ETH, whatever, if that has the most liquidity, like it actually becomes attractive to the bigger players as well. And 100%. Then there's like smaller. Oh, now I'm on Bridgeway actually. Like it just gets really attractive because there's so much liquidity. Yeah, interesting. So have you set up a Uniswap v3 range, which is above the like usual peg?
Ah.
Maybe.
No, no, I can neither confirm or deny.
No, it just came to mind that would be like maybe you'll be the only one like the first time this happens. So
Who knows? Maybe I have an alt on Dune that's working
yeah,
only on private dashboards.
Yeah, interesting to hear why you're making this thesis. So now I'm sharing my
That's
things here,
okay.
but
That's
I
okay.
guess that's all
I
right.
like it. I like it. I like it. We got some like visual.
So stablecoins get to 0.5 trillion market cap. So I think this is a bit harder to track on Dune, but
Yeah.
we still have some insight into this.
Okay, let's go and look at what's happening on Ethereum then.
There's actually there's other data providers, but I don't know about them.
So good. So it looks like we're doing okay, huh?
Yeah, looks like the stablecoin market is really growing. So it has tripled since last year. So like tripled in 1 year from now, pretty much. And then you would expect, yeah, it's only on Ethereum. So like this data is really a bit lacking.
Yeah.
So, but like if this doubles, then probably like the entire crypto market cap of stablecoins will probably be like above 0.5 trillion. So seems like your prediction is becoming true. What do you think about like, I guess stablecoins in general? Like it's just like a really like, how do you think stablecoins will be like? Are they gonna stay a DeFi thing, or is there like some like real world applications that are gonna use stablecoins?
Both, I think. So like my prediction is based on that both will happen, right? So we're seeing like demand for block space, like EVM block space and other types of block space just go through the roof. The Tendermint ecosystem, there's like real stuff happening there with the IBC and so on. So that's like coming to like it's potentially even beyond critical mass at this point, right? And it's getting to the point where it's going to have like real utility, like finding a home in that ecosystem. In Polkadot, the same. Solana, the same. The whole like EVM L2s, the same. Users are coming in. So like stablecoins are actually like a pretty great proxy to measure adoption in the space overall, right? Like institutional adoption, liquidity of Bitcoin. Like when I started out in the industry as an analyst in a crypto fund called Decentral Park Capital, we were like, I mean, at that point we were looking at like how Tether grows quite a lot, and like one of my first sort of like tweets that got a lot of engagement on Twitter when I started posting was how like Tether grows together with Bitcoin and Bitcoin grows together with Tether, right? And there's no conspiracy there. It's just that like more liquidity makes that product more valuable. End of, right? It's a flywheel. More users come in, liquidity gaps get created, more stable coins get printed. More stable coins get printed, the products and the space overall has deeper liquidity, more utility, and it becomes more valuable, so more users come in. And then again, the liquidity gaps show, and then like it keeps, the flywheel keeps turning. So with all of these new ecosystems, in order for them to become useful, they will need like a ton of stablecoin. And whether it's going to be incentivized or not incentivized, we will see. I think it will be a mix of both. But there's also kind of like algorithmic stablecoins. There's like synthetic stablecoins. There's like all kind of stablecoins now. So you have new environments that need that liquidity. You have new technologies for like producing a stable coin, a stable asset, or whatnot, and you have like more penetration of stablecoins as rails for like transactions in the not purely off-chain world. I forget, but like I was reading something more recently about look at Terra, for example. I think that was it. Like Terra is now going to be the Terra Community Fund which is like a DAO to interface. So like its mandate is to grow basically Terra, right? They brokered a sponsorship deal with the Washington Nationals, which is like a popular baseball team in the States, for like something like 25 or 40 million. I forget which of the two it is. And they are going to make UST spendable in the stadium's premises. So you'll buy hot dogs with stable coins, right? Which is pretty fascinating. I mean, that tells you something about where the world is going. I'm pretty sure that for merchants as well, if you get over kind of the interface problems, these solutions are a lot like more cost effective and potentially even like better UX, right? Imagine if you're a merchant, for example, you're collecting UST, and then you got to do your payments at the end of the month. But like in the meantime, you could have like a Yearn API plugged in, right? And like while your income, your revenue sits in that kind of like checking account or whatever it is, it also earns interest at the same time, and you can do that like almost in an a la carte fashion. So yeah, really fascinating stuff. Like I think we have like a lot to see there, but I'm pretty bullish, like regardless of market conditions, that stablecoins will continue to grow. Like also one thing about stablecoins is that very rarely in the history, at least the more recent history of the industry, even like in 2019 when the market was like choppy as hell, you didn't really see stablecoin liquidity being withdrawn from the market. It just stays, right? Because then it's that flywheel that we were talking about before. So exciting stuff.
Yeah. Once stablecoins enter the system, or like once any money really enters the system, like it's very sticky. Like it hardly leaves anymore.
I think that's also true for non-fungible humans. Like I haven't like been able to like unstick myself from this.
Yeah, no, that took a while. Yes. Like I don't think like anyone who works in the industry now like will, like maybe they'll become a kindergartner or something just because it's too stressful. But like they won't like switch back to like Google or Meta or like whatever.
No.
Like the like prospects of like working at those companies, like once you've seen the other side and you've like worked in crypto and like everyone is really excited and just loves their job really. There's no coming back.
It is too much fun. Too much fun.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look at us. Like we're working. Like how great is this?
The content creators.
Podcaster. Like I just wanted to comment like stablecoins being accepted in like the premises of a stadium. That very much sounds like a 27 bull market like headline. It's like
right, like hey, we're gonna make this thing.
Yeah, it's a very weird like
new ICO. We're gonna put it in stadiums, and you're like, cool, maybe you'll do it. But like now it's happening. Yeah. So it's props to these guys. They've done a great work.
Yeah. Like it is a cool integration. I think like the recent news of like Canada freezing bank accounts, like associated to these like truckers, like whether like on whatever side of the political spectrum you stand there, it's like I think stablecoin adoption could grow through like topics like these as well, where it's like Definitely. Not your keys, not your money. Like that is like by default the case for a bank, and like nobody can take away my DAI which are in my bank account. Like if I go protesting, like I don't care if they freeze my bank account. It's like it's negative anyways, like whatever.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm not like a big reader of the Financial Times, but I chanced upon an article from June 2021 or July 2021 and so on. And I forget the author's name, but people should look for it and go read it. And he was making some predictions about like, how things are going to go as the COVID recovery goes. And his sort of thesis was that governments like love the special powers that they've gotten because of COVID, right? Like in the name of protecting people and all that, they have like a ton of special powers now, and they're like not really going to give them up. And so one of the predictions he was making under that sort of context was that governments will actually start censoring transactions in the financial system, much like what we're seeing now in Canada, right? So it will be like a battlefield, I think, in the coming like year, 2 years, 3 years, who knows? But we are, I think, much further along. If you've been in this industry for like a while, it's like a time warp, right? Like things happen super fast, but you're only looking at like a smaller slice because you're boundedly rational. You're like, some of us are giga brains, not me, but like, I know a few people. But things move incredibly fast, and like exponential growth is really hard to like grasp, right? And so looking back and like trying to understand where we're at right now, we are like mainstream, right? There's this like saying, first they laugh at you, then they like something you, then they fight you, and then you win. And we're definitely at the then they fight you stage, right? Which means that like we're not that early. There's still so much stuff that we need to build to make this even more useful, and valuable and exciting and fun and fair, and like all these things that we might be working towards. Other people are like applying their time scamming other people, like God knows why, but still, we're not that early. And so I'm I think we will win at the end, but it will just be choppy chops.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's an ongoing development. Like you can't like I can't really tell what's gonna happen, but like crypto's here to stay, and like in whatever like shape or form that will transpire, and like how far the regulators can like reach into the space, like that is yet to be decided, and like we'll have to see how these battles are like battles, like how the like I don't know how the industry will manage to stay afloat. Yeah, now we're political commentators as well.
Okay. Roll it back. Roll it back.
Just get everything in here.
Back to predictions.
So you predicted 100 million users by end of year, and I am very interested in how you like. We've looked at you've looked at the DeFi users in DeFi dashboard just earlier, and there we were like at 4.4 million or something. So how do we get to 100 million users by end of year?
So a little bird told me that at the end of 2021 in December, MetaMask had like clocked something like 25 million unique addresses, right?
Okay.
So let's assume that there's like, you can make some smart assumptions again, right? But let's assume that it's like half of that. So I don't necessarily think that it's going to happen this year, but like in the next couple of years, I think, wallet infrastructure is getting better. We talked about like this demand for block space increasing. There's like infrastructure work happening to like be able to service that demand. There's new types of applications being developed and so on. There's like, financial world in like a blockchain context is growing. So I think it's very likely that we'll get there. And also, like, if I'm right about every prediction that I make, then people are going to think that like I am a fucking clairvoyant. And I actually,
you just took like the clearest trends, like stable coins go up, users go up. It's like ETH staking good. Like so just you can go back in the year and be like, hey, like I'm actually like I'm so smart. No, but I enjoyed the thread. Like but yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah, I think that was the last thesis that I wanted to pick into. So
I am bullish. I'm bullish everything though, right? Like, and that's like, sometimes people come up to me, especially people that are like not don't work in the industry and don't spend a bunch of time like on the metaverse. But they're like, well, crypto is full of scams. Crypto, did you see this scam? Did you see this stuff? Blah blah blah. Like, it's usually negative stuff. And I'm not paying enough attention to that, right? Because again, like, I have limited time and my attention span is finite and so on. And like, I think that the best thing I can do for me to be healthy and productive and kind of like help this ecosystem move forward in like any way I can is to just focus on the good stuff, And maybe that's like a blind spot that I have sometimes, right? Because I'm always like super optimistic, and I'm like up, up, up. We're gonna go up, up, up. But being more pragmatic, like who knows? Maybe this year, it's not. It's going to be a lot of infrastructure work this year. Maybe like there's bigger gaps than we think we can fill quickly enough. So we'll see. But like I'm here for a while. Don't think I'm going anywhere if it's up to me to decide. So I think over like a longer time period, we're gonna see still like even more great things happen in this little Web3 space of ours.
Yeah, it's hard to be bearish or like think of like negative things that can, like, there's a lot of negative things that can happen. Like everything can go to shit, but like if you work in the space and like you see what kind of people are getting recruited, like what kind of people you get to interact with on a day-to-day basis, and that it's just like the smartest people from all over the world who are like all like in their like 25 to like 35 40 range, where it's like they're the most productive in their lives, and like they are all like coming to crypto. And it's like there's no, like, if you bet against this, like you're betting against like collective human like intelligence basically.
Yep.
And it's
Yep.
like it's just a very hard like if the regulators and the states and like whatever don't really like royally fuck us, but even then like the underlying technology is so strong that it's like, even if they regulate like let them regulate the NFT market or something, it's still like the essence of like having a like digital like ownership of like non-fungible asset, that will still be there, like even if it's like regulated or whatever. Like there's like very little things that can really, like for DeFi it's like a bit like more like harder, because like banking rules and like banking regulations have been tough like historically. But in general, like there will always be loopholes. Like we'll always find a way to like make this work. And even if it is like being government like compliant in the end, like maybe there's no more urn, which is like a bunch of like anon devs. But like I don't hope that. Like I hope that like we continue of this trend of like being like free and open and like free to do whatever we want. And yeah, but like there's very hard case to make to like bet against like all of these smart people.
Yeah, 100%. And like as far as kind of like the regulator work and all that goes, like I think to some extent, it's like it's a sign of the times. There's like there's greater forces at play here, and it's basically this is the next 5-6 years is the boomer swan song, right? Boomers will like, for good, for better or worse, they will not really be around anymore, like not in positions of power, not because they will be like way past their prime, right? And new generations will start kind of like having a lot more of a say in how this world is being run. And so I think there's this really interesting theory called the Strauss-Howe generational theory or something like that. It's like fairly US focused, but it basically talks about like how the world moves in like 80-year cycles, and there's like 4 archetypes of generation, and one generation like follows the next, and the archetypes like are almost like sequential, at least like that's how they present it. It's very contentious. There's like a lot of criticisms in the fact that it's like not peer review and it's almost like astrology the way they present it. But it is actually interesting to think about, right? Like generational sort of changes and the change of guard and so on. So I want to be pretty bullish on how we'll manage this eventually, even if the short term is a little bit turbulent, right? Like nothing is irreversible. And a lot of this, the way I understand it, and it's also kind of like, my personal story and how I got into this space and kind of got stuck here, in a good way, stuck here, is that like I was looking at things outside in the world as it were, and I wasn't impressed. I was actually pretty disappointed, by like institutions, power structures, like all these things. And so when I was younger, I always thought like, hey, maybe you can change it from the inside. That's the way to change it. And then you grow a little bit older and you realize that like the inside is never going to change, right? Because like mature institutions and organizations are at that stage because they have done something right. And then at that point of maturity, they become a lot more inflexible. And so the only way to meaningfully affect change is to build alternatives. And I think this is what we're doing here to some extent. So it's a powerful motive, and I do hope that like people that enter this ecosystem now and are or have been around for like 6 months, a year, and so on, like I really hope that they think about that stuff as well a bit, except for like the pumps and dumps. Like, just buy stuff that you like, hold them for a long time, you'll do fine. But really have like a chance to make something better here, I think. So let's go, I suppose.
Yeah, let's fucking go. Yeah, it just one thing that came to mind is like in scientific circles, I think they say like science advances one funeral at a time. So that, yeah, like, because like you can't detect like if there's like one like professor who's like really established in his field, and then it's like, yeah, like as long as he's around, like there's no changing his theories. So like as soon as he's dead, there's like a bunch of young undergrads will come in and be like, hey, like this is actually true. Like, can we like change this? So yeah, I like very interesting topics to think about. And yeah, like I hope that like the newcomers into the space really pick up the culture that you just like try to explain, of like, hey, we're actually trying to like, we're disappointed in the world how it is, and like let's make this better. Like which
is another, like, this is an interesting point, right? Like, because you get like, you're seeing a little bit of like a culture clash, like at the tail end of 21 and the beginning of 22 and so on. Like there's like a bunch of new people that are maybe as like, I don't know, but like if we look at the numbers, since we are here for that, right? Like we're here for the data. But if you look at the data, I think it took this space maybe 10 years to grow to like X number of users, right? And like participants and so on. And I think maybe in 2021 and maybe a little bit before that, that probably doubled. And like, that's what exponential growth looks like. Like, it takes 10 years to get to like 10 million, and then it takes 1 year to get to 20 million. And so that has some interesting like ripple effects on like the culture, right? Of what this space represents, what the norms are, how people behave. And you see that kind of manifest on like Twitter outrage and like cancel culture making its like first steps into this like Web3 playground and so on. So I really hope that we can all sort of rise above it and live and let live, and just be content working on cool stuff, which is in and of itself like a huge privilege, right? I think people forget that there's like a ton of others having like a much worse time. So outrage culture is
that's all like, we all have a common enemy, and that is like the non-progress in the world. Like, we want to
exactly.
make the space, like we like the world would be a better place if like we had, like, I was working at like a treasury of a German like big like car manufacturer, and like I worked there and I already had some kind of crypto knowledge, and I just sat there and was like, if we would just send stablecoins, guys, like this project would have been over. Like it was like new like treasury finance software, and it was like 3-year project, cost like fucking millions and millions of dollars. I was like, yeah, like let's just like give them a wallet, like send them some stables, and it's like, yeah. So yeah, that's what we're fighting against. We can make the whole, like, we can make so much things so much more efficient, and like level the playing field in a lot of ways. Like there's like a million things we can think about that like blockchain systems can improve, but not everything needs a blockchain as well. That's also something to think about.
Very true.
So yeah, I think this was a very good conversation, and we have had Thomas collect questions from the chat during the podcast. So I hope there's some questions in there. I'll get Thomas into the cast here. Hello, Thomas.
Right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome conversation. Thanks for that. Really interesting. So yeah, we've had a few pretty good questions. I'll kick them off. One from Cliff Runner. He said his question is how to monetize the unique thinking and coding skills, yet still remain true to the community.
How to monetize smart contract coding skills, but like not scam people, basically, right?
Yeah, I didn't know if he means that or he means Dune skills specifically.
Yeah. I don't know. I think in general, like the litmus test has to be like, don't scam people. The other litmus test is like, is what you're going to offer to the world make more people better off than it will people worse off. And like the ideal scenario is where you make no one worse off and some people at least better off, right? So that's like the Pareto principle. So I guess this can translate on Dune as well. But you know, Dune is like by design not harmful, right? It's like by design it doesn't allow for, because it's about information like curation, information creation, and information consumption, and there is no spin that you can put on a story that can make like the story or the facts that can make them alternative facts or malicious or anything like that. It's just the facts, and that's like a really powerful thing. So like as far as Dune goes, just like hack away.
Awesome.
So I think like, can I
yeah,
there's
please.
some like I think you always have like the burden of like you have to contextualize your data. If we are just looking at OpenSea and LooksRare like trading volume at the moment, and like somebody is like totally not familiar, hasn't been on like crypto Twitter ever, just knows like the Dune interface, and it's just like on a dashboard which shows like NFT secondary volume, like then you'll be like, holy shit, like like LooksRare is absolutely stomping OpenSea into the ground. But like if you like think for a second, then you are like, hey, why is there suddenly like 500 like million more like daily trading volume, and like maybe there's like an additional story that goes on here. So like you could come to that conclusion on your own because you're like, this can't be like this has to be like some weird thing that's happening. But yeah, I think you have to contextualize your data properly. I think that's always something you have to keep in mind.
Who was it? Who did the dashboard? Was it Dobby? Yeah, shout out to Dobby. Great work.
Yeah. As someone who was kind of new to it myself, I really appreciated people who properly added explainers on their dashboards. All right, so next question. He's keen to find out how much time a full-time Web3 analyst spends on surfacing data, writing out analysis, creating decks, and or learning new things. What does a typical analyst day look like? And that's from Peter the Rock.
Yeah, I don't like days as like a unit of of measurement, because like weeks are probably better in my life at least. How long does it take? Uh, my my whole waking time. It's, I kid, but I also don't kid. Like I think about that stuff even when I'm like trying to relax, which is unhealthy to some extent, but also leads to some interesting like findings. So on balance, it works. And then what does it entail? It entails like talking to a bunch of people. It entails like writing a lot. It entails looking at data and hacking things away. It entails just like looking at the wall and just thinking about things, listening to podcasts like this one. Shout out to everybody that's listening. Yeah, a bunch of things. And it's atypical in a way because like being able to find truth and insights and so on is actually like creative work to some extent, right? There is no formula. It's like part science, like maximize the quality of the inputs, and that's where the science lies, right? Like doing proper analysis and like what Boxer was talking about before about contextualizing your data and all that. But then the synthesis process is a very creative thing, and creative work is also unstructured to some extent, right? Like you have to sometimes just do nothing, and let it simmer for a bit. Let all those high quality inputs simmer down, and then you get like the epiphany moment. So they're like, as far as I'm concerned, and the way I've experienced it, there is no formula, right? And like, we're all different. Like that's the way I work. But like someone else might have like a completely different process and produce even greater outcomes than I or anybody else. So yeah, just listen to your gut and then take some time to reflect on what you've done and what the outcomes were, and then revisit what you need to revisit, double down on the things that worked, and keep going.
Florian, have anything to add?
No, very
No?
solid answer.
All right, yeah, very comprehensive. Thank you. And another one from Peter the Rock. Web3 data is relatively new territory. What would you say is the best practice for ensuring that your queries are correct and accurate?
Building in increments, and referencing for the truth. That's Etherscan or like any other block explorer frequently, because like the most interesting stuff like take a little bit of work to do, right? Like putting together like different addresses, data sets, the required treatment. We talked about it a little bit earlier about how I went about building that bridge away dashboard. So you have to like take apart the components that make the whole, and as you build them, you have to like cross-reference for their validity, right? And that makes the whole thing more manageable. But it also, like, because there's logic that builds upon logic and so on, you got to secure the base, like what you're building on. You got to have a high degree of certainty, right? Is it 95%? Is it 99%? I don't know. But you have to have that certainty in order to kind of like build something that's together and it works hopefully perpetually.
Nice.
Yeah, maybe my take on that. Like, I agree that you build in increments. You always look like you go from the raw data. Like you don't like build like you don't immediately like sum something or something. Like you always like go from the raw data, then you actually check the raw data. If there's any like extreme outliers in there, then you are like, hey, how can I like work with these outliers? Is there any outliers? And then like in every, like I like to write my queries like very modular, so that you can always check like, is this part of the query correct? And then like you can move on. And then it's like, in the next part is like, does this like result actually make sense? And oftentimes you can check back with Etherscan, or you can use like Nansen or like the block, or like there's like a few other data providers that you can reference. And then like if you like have the result data set, and like then you can actually like, then you start like summing with that, and like or like if you have a data set that you can then work with, then if you're confident in that base data set, then you can do all kinds of different things with that like base data set, but always build like composable queries pretty much. So like a lot of my queries are actually like the same, like first like few hundred lines are the same, and then like after that I add complexity. But it's like getting like building blocks on top of each other. That's like a really important principle.
Awesome. How much experience did you have with SQL when you started with Dune? That's from F70. 0? Nice.
Zero experience. Like Frederick, bless his soul. Only no. Like Frederick was my teacher, basically. Like I had. So the way I got stuck in with Dune, I did like a little course for SQL. I was just curious, but like I didn't have like anywhere useful to apply that like newly acquired knowledge, right? And it was like just the basics that you get in like a day or so, maybe 2 days. And then I meet Frederick, and he's like, "Well, I'm doing this thing, SQL and Ethereum. Like maybe you want to try it." I'm like, "Fuck yeah, I want to try it." Like I learned all these new skills. I got to deploy them somewhere, and so. Then it was like a game of interesting questions, right? And in the beginning, it wasn't like exactly easy or user friendly and so on, but like it just speaks to like how good the product is. Even if it was janky as hell, you still wanted to find the answer because there was no other place where you could get the answer. So you got to go through the motions of learning how to use the tool, and that's like the language that you express it in is SQL, to get to that to get that answer. And like, if you are of a certain volition, you quickly find that that's actually a very fun process to undertake.
And I have a follow-up question of my own. Somebody said in the chat that actually SQL is the easy part, and I've heard that a lot. And I wanted to ask you, if SQL is the easy part, then what's the hard part?
Asking the right questions. That's the hard part. And the grit to like stick with it when it gets hard, right? Maybe you're answering the right question, but you don't have the patience to like bump your head against the wall a few times and like, you know, fuck, this doesn't work. It's not this address. Why does this not, like, I gotta like go speak to Florian and like figure out what's happening. And Florian is like, well, here's the answer. But sometimes Florian is like, fuck, I don't know. So then you're like, so then you're both on this like quest to find like how this thing happens. And it's just fun, you know. You make friends in the process. So if you see it that way,
yeah.
So if you see it that way, you're gonna have a great time.
Fantastic. And one more question. How useful is machine learning or other data prediction models in Web3 data? That's given Malangu.
Good question. We haven't seen many applications of it yet, at least in like a permissionless environment, right? I guess there's like a bunch of machine learning happening within firms like Chainalysis and you know, forensics, blockchain analytics and forensics companies, and like I guess that's useful a bunch. Although like I will lie if I tell you that like I know a ton about machine learning, but I do know that except for if it's like very small sort of time increments, like sub-minute increments, like at least for as long as I was like fidgeting with that stuff, machine learning can't predict the price of Bitcoin. Or I did a very shitty job at like
I think Nansen is also utilizing machine learning to produce their labels. So I think that is quite an interesting use case of basically looking at the history of a user, and then they're not predicting stuff, but they're very good at like making like attributions to what they've actually done in the past, and like is their performance gonna like I guess like if you have like an elite DEX trader like label, that is kind of like it's not a prediction, but it's like it's kind of like an honorary title they give you. And like, I don't know if like machine learning always has to be like predicting the future. Like, I guess you can also like, you can like look backwards and like analyze like, hey, how have these people performed? And like, maybe that's more of a case of like when and case and if statements. So it's like, I don't know how much of machine learning is involved in there, but like either way, like I think there's like, because the data is so public and like so clear, and like most of the times it's pretty workable, that like there's a huge avenue for like people who utilize machine learning here to try and like build models and like do cool stuff in the space.
Yeah, and like to add to that point, like so Facebook was going to build Libra, DM, and so on, right? And like Facebook to kind of like create this like perfect profile of users, like the only thing that they were missing was financial data, financial transactions data, right? And so I think they have a history of like trying to do deals with like banks and Visa and MasterCard and companies that have huge data sets of financial transactions, so that they can take all this like contextual information that they have about users and then merge it, the data sets, with the financial transactions data. And that gives you kind of like the whole puzzle if you're trying to like sell stuff to people, right? So this is the inverse. We have like all the financial data, right, and the social graph, but we have no clue what's happening with like the accounts, like who the accounts are, and like what happens to the rest of the profile. So I think this is an even more interesting question, and that's when machine learning, at least in that frame of reference, is going to be like incredibly powerful, right? Once you have like, you know, some sort of ZK powered anonymity but complete profiles with like attributes and all that stuff, you know, we can get to a much richer experience online than we've been used to so far.
Great. And that pretty much covers the questions we've had.
Super. Gosh, this was a breeze, guys.
Yeah, this was great.
We're clocking at like 1 hour 24. Shout out to all the wizards. Go check the Solana data set just out. Dude, you know, like I was in Lisbon at the Ethereum conference, and people were like, "Who are you again? Oh, you're the Dune guy."
It's
People like, I'm not a paid shill for anyone that for anyone that's wondering. Like, I just really like the product and the guys that build it. So thank you for having me. This was great.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
You got a wonderful Dune mug.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, I'll send you a form after the
awesome.
talk. Yeah, thanks everyone for listening in. Tune in next week with a mystery guest, and yeah, see you next time. Bye bye.